Hi, I'm Kathy Bland and I'm the Intergenerational Church Enabler for our diocese. In this week following Pentecost, I've been reflecting on what it might mean for us during this time of lockdown to understand something of the Pentecost story. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all gathered together in one place, which is exactly what we're not in this time of not gathering together. And yet, in a sense, we are in one place in a somewhat shared experience with people across the world, and also connecting in a way that we never have done before with some of the people who didn't used to come to our church buildings. Almost 1 in 4 adults potentially have been to an online service during lockdown. And so we have a new way of connecting with them. In this somewhat shared experience, perhaps we can use this opportunity to understand something of the experience of the housebound, the isolated, the anxious, those people who were excluded from the busy goings on of the church. So if the Holy Spirit is blowing through our church, through our house, through the world during this time, what does that mean? Perhaps it means for a while that we can join in with the experience of the introvert and the anxious and the isolated. Understand something from this place about what it means to be excluded. And from there, be able to understand what God might mean when the promise is made that God's Spirit will be poured out on all people. And what is the Pentecost story about if it's not about the Holy Spirit enabling people to connect in a way that transcends barriers? This is an opportunity for us to imagine things differently. While some people will find that there are more barriers than there were before now, for some this will be the first time that they've been able to connect with God. The Korean writer Hee-sung Kim describes the Holy Spirit somewhat like the Korean concept of Salim. She describes Salim as being the everyday work towards healing and wholeness. The Holy Spirit's work being a dance of mending broken hearts, recycling and helping people to love and not harm one another. For the longest time we've been accused of being stuck inside our church buildings where no one will ever find us, but here we find ourselves exposed outside in the unfamiliar territory of the world of online. People can dip in and taste what we're offering. There's no door anymore. And we have no familiar chair or pew to sit on, except the one in our own house or garden, and now everyone can see us. Which of us has learned a new skill in the last few weeks so that we can talk to the people we love, whether it's Zooming or video calling? We're learning these skills so that we can connect with people, so that we can be gathered in one place beyond barriers. Holy Spirit really can blow into our lives if we allow her to. So what would it mean if we were to hold on to that possibility instead of getting back to normal? I know that might be hard idea for some people who are wholeheartedly hoping to re-establish some sense of normal and familiar, but this is an opportunity for us to rethink, to imagine differently and do things differently. There are a group of climate activists who've been taking time out on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. to photograph themselves holding up a sign that says "No going back, another world is possible." In terms of carbon emissions, there's so much that is currently different. We've cut our car use in a way that Greta Thunberg couldn't have imagined a year ago. How can we learn from some of the ways in which we've been living differently that would help our planet heal and flourish? And if we were to hold up the sign to our churches, in what other ways is there now no going back? How can we imagine a world different so that we can include the people who've been excluded previously? How can we continue to be willing to step outside our comfort zones and learn new skills for the sake of God's kingdom, allowing for the possibility of God's Holy Spirit being poured out on all people? Now is a time that we can dream dreams and see visions, a time when we can allow for the possibility of the Holy Spirit blowing through our whole church. On Ascension Day, a group of international messy churches gathered together for 12 hours for an adventure around the world that meant that messy churches from Hereford Diocese and New Zealand and South Africa, Canada, Australia and Sweden were all together in one place. There was a profound sense of God's Holy Spirit talking to people in their own languages, transcending the barriers of geography and seas, and connecting as a messy church family. During the day, we laughed together and prayed. We played together and we joined in singing and all sorts of messiness. Lucy Moore, the Messy Church founder, said that at the beginning of lockdown, her team had a sense that we are here for such a time as this. Messy Church leaders have always been able to imagine the church differently, wanting to connect with people in new and different ways, with fewer barriers. Can the same be said of us, of a local church too? Are we here in Hereford Diocese for such a time as this, joining in with that Holy Spirit Psalm dance of mending broken hearts and helping people love each other? Being Christ's hands and feet to our neighbours in a more real way than we ever have before. Christ on the end of a phone, Christ in our letter writing, Christ in our shopping and delivering food, Christ in our patience, Christ in our gardening, Christ in our noticing of the birdsong, Christ in our stewardship of resources, Christ in the rhythm of our day. What if there is no going back? What if we're being called to learn how to be gathered together with our community differently? Holy Spirit, come as a blowing wind, as tongues of fire. Confound us, disturb us, stir us, waken us, change us, warm us, help us, love us. If there is no going back, inspire and encourage us to understand what that might mean. If we're here for such a time as this, then be with us as you shape us to be fit for this calling. Amen.